Hi guys, and welcome to part 2 of my Ring review series. So last time out I covered the 95 TV version. Today I'm going to be talking about the big one, the 98 theatrical version that most people are familiar with. This one was directed by Hideo Nakata. Not heard of him, but from looking at his filmography, he's done a lot of J-horrors that I recognise by name that I've not yet seen. So I think he's had a good career, this guy. And in the starring roles, we've got Nanako Matsushima, who plays Riku. So between the TV version and this one, they've gotten rid of the male lead from the 95 one and replaced him with a female lead played by the actress whose name I've just given you. I'm not too bothered about that either way. I mean, I enjoyed the character from the TV version and I enjoyed this character as well, but I definitely wanted to name this actress because she's extremely good in this film. She's had a long career in movies, but she's never gone to the West. She's never ventured outside of Japan, which is a little bit of a shame. But in this film, she's brilliant, actually. And joining her is Hiroyuki Sanada. I'm terrible with Japanese names. This is a name that might not be familiar to you. He plays Riku's ex-husband in this, who joins her on her investigative quest. But this actor, he's somebody you definitely will have seen, even if you don't recognise the name, because this guy did go to America at some point after doing this film, and he's been in all sorts of famous Hollywood movies. He's been in Sunshine, Life, Bullet Train, Lost, John Wick 4. Too many for me to mention all of them. This guy is an extremely prominent actor in Hollywood circles. If you picture in your head a middle-aged Japanese guy between the ages of, say, 45 and 55, I bet that you're imagining the same guy that I'm talking about, because this guy is literally the go-to Japanese middle-aged guy for Hollywood. I'm not going to explain the plot because I think most people know the story of Ring. Plus, when I did my review for the TV version, I did briefly explain the plot in that video. This film kicks off nicely with the traditional kill scene that you always get at the start of this story. But given that this is the Japanese version of the movie, it feels kind of American to start off with. It's almost like something out of a Scream film. So we've got these two teenage girls just goofing around, scaring each other. The parents are out for the evening, and then the phone goes off and they think it's something sinister, and then it turns out to be something innocent. But then the atmosphere starts ramping back up again because the TV turns on by itself, and I was loving the slow pace of this. But then the film kind of drops a bollock a little bit with the manner in which the victim dies, because she sort of turns to the camera and clearly she's seen Sadako, but then the picture freezes as she's like screaming, and then the screen turns to white, and that's all we see. And I think we could have had a better version of a heart attack than this. This feels like something that we might get in a TV version of a film. And it's very reminiscent, actually, of the opening kill from the original Friday the 13th, when the Girl Scout dies in the loft and the screen freezes when she's like this. And I've heard some people say over time that kill is really lame, and it's Friday the 13th in its infancy, and we haven't got to the good stuff yet. Well, Ring was doing this exact thing, like 20 years later. Nobody seems to notice, just because the rest of the movie is so legendary. Once we get past this opening kill, the movie enters what I would say is its least impressive phase. We get maybe 15 minutes of Riku going around just asking people questions. She's dipping her toes into the mystery, but these scenes don't really have much of a structure. There's no real logic to why we go from one scene to another. Plus, there are a few scenes where Riku's son takes centre stage, and I don't really know why, given the fact that he's not really going to feature in the movie after a point. But part of my fatigue here might be the fact that I just watched the TV version last week, and I've already gone through this part of the story quite recently. But once we get to the point where Riku goes to the Holiday Inn, or whatever it's called in this, and she finds the actual videotape, that's when the film almost becomes uncriticisable for the rest of it. I think I just invented a new word. The videotape scene at the holiday place is so much better than what we got in the TV version. Mainly, the actual footage on the tape is better. It's a shortened version, essentially, of what we would eventually get in the American remake. Lots of creepy images, the best of which is the final one of the well. Somehow this image is scarier when Sadako is not on it, and they've captured the well just perfectly in this. It's the ideal distance away from the camera. There's just the right amount of static and grain, and I swear if you look hard enough, you can just about make out Sadako's black hair on the top of the well. It's like she's waiting just inside the well for the director to tell her to get moving towards the TV or something. It's like he's at the bottom of the well, like, okay, and go! Another reason why this particular scene is better than it was in the 95 version. So in that one, the main character, while he was watching the videotape, it was like he was having some kind of seizure. He had his hand on his head and he was going, ah! But it just distracted us from actually watching the videotape. But there's none of that this time around. We can just focus solely on the tape. I think the videotape this time fills the entirety of our screen, so we can't even see Riku's reaction. But it's so creepily done. The sound effects as well, it's like scraping violins or something like that. The soundtrack in general is so much better this time around. On that first film, it was full of so many weird tunes, the weird and the wonderful and the bad. This time around, you might not even notice the soundtrack that much if it's your first time watching this and you really get into the movie, but that's almost as it should be. But at just the right moments, we get these creepy, scratchy sort of effects, especially when you're watching the videotape. Another key scene in any version of Ring is the final kill, and again, so much better in this version. This is when we finally get the legendary kill where Sadako comes out of the well, comes through the TV screen. It's amazing, and if there was a top 100 list for best ever kills in horror, there's no way, in my opinion, you could leave this kill off that list. And yet, there are a couple of things about it I would just change personally. So, when Sadako gets into the sitting room, the guy, Hiroyuki, he tries to turn and get away, but he does the most pathetic fall onto the floor. And then once he's down there, he doesn't just get back up again, he starts crawling away. It's that most pathetic of horror tropes, you know, when someone's running away from a killer and they not only fall but they also start crawling afterwards. They don't just get back up. It's normally women, but on this occasion it's a guy, and it's really noticeable when you've watched the film like 2 or 3 times. The other thing I would change is the lighting. I would have set this kill at night personally, had the sitting room mostly in darkness, so the TV is the main source of light. Setting it in the daytime just takes a little bit away from me. I get that they had to align this kill with the exact time that the character initially watched the tape a week ago, but they could have had him watch the tape at night originally, so that 7 days later you can have the kill at night. But it's a small thing. I don't want to sound like I'm belly aching about what is obviously an amazing moment in horror cinema, but the thing is, I really like this kill and the way that it's done in the American version, so it's fun for me to just try and think of little ways that I could tinker it to make it even more perfect. Staying with the character of Ryuji, I probably butchered that name again. This character is strangely flat, given the fact that he's played by such a great actor. He doesn't really change his facial expression much up until the scene where he dies. I can't imagine that the two leads in this had much of a romance in the past. I'm very much willing to bet that their child was the result of a one-night stand or a very, very brief fling, because when they hook up again to investigate this mystery, there's not even the slightest glimmer in either of their pairs of eyes that they might want to start something again. This is in contrast to the American version, where the two leads in that one, there's definitely a little bit of a spark still there, and they probably had quite a big relationship, I think, in the past. I can't remember if it's ever said whether they did or they didn't, but my feeling was at the end of the American version of Ring that they would have maybe gotten back together eventually, had it not been for the final kill in that movie. But in this Japanese version of The Ring, romance is a complete no-no. Neither of these characters are even thinking it during this. But that's not a criticism on the movie. The fact that we don't have that stuff in this means that we can just focus on the horror and focus on what else is going on. So I think I'm going to move towards wrapping up. This was really fun to come back to this movie. I've not seen it for about 4 years. If you've not seen it, I would encourage you to check it out. Even if you don't like the idea of getting into J-horror in any big way, I would still say at least try out like the main 3 or 4 famous films that have come out of Japan. So this, Ju-on, Audition, things like that, because you're missing out on a whole lot if you don't check out horror films from that part of the world, and horror films that are subtitled in general. There are some horror fans who won't watch any film if they are subtitled, but I've seen so many great ones over the years that are not spoken in English from Europe. There's so many good ones that get made in Europe from all manner of countries. But this was really cool. I'm really looking forward to getting to the American version. I think that one will be closer to the realm of masterpiece for me, whereas this one is more of a landmark film than a masterpiece. But certainly a lot of people will prefer this one just because it came first. Right, so let's get to the bag of terror and find out how I'm going to score this. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 bloody axes out of 5. This is compared to the 3 that I gave the TV version from '95. I reckon some of you will be a little bit surprised I've only given this 4 out of 5, but we'll see how the American version does. But I won't be moving on to that one next. Next after this will be Spiral, not to be confused with the Chris Rock Saw film. Was it Chris Rock who did that film? No. Next is Spiral in this review series, which was the original Japanese sequel to Ring, and I'll explain a bit more as to why that was such a weird production when I come to that video. But for now, until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.